Hello there, and welcome to this quiet corner of curiosity, where science takes its time and wonder settles into the soft rhythm of night. If you've pressed play tonight, perhaps you are looking not just for knowledge, but for something gentler, something steady, a companion to drift alongside you as the hours unwind. I'm glad you're here. Take a moment wherever you are to notice the space around you. Maybe the lights are dim, maybe you're curled up under a blanket, or perhaps you're lying still with only the faint hum of the outside world keeping you company. Let the pace slow. Let your breathing fall into its own natural tide. This is your time. Tonight we are going to wander back, far back into an age that feels more like myth than memory. A time when the earth, the very ground beneath our feet, looked nothing like the maps we know today. Imagine, if you will, a world without separate continents. No Atlantic dividing the Americas from Africa. No vast Pacific stretching endlessly between Asia and the western shores of North America. Instead, picture one immense sweep of land, an enormous supercontinent gathered together in a single colossal body. This was Pangaea. The name comes from the Greek roots pan, meaning all, and Gaia, meaning earth. Quite literally, all the earth. It is almost poetic, isn't it? As if the planet itself once longed for unity, pulling its wandering fragments close, pressing them together until they formed one continuous mass surrounded by a vast ocean. When we say Pangaea, it's not just a geological term. It's a reminder that the Earth is not fixed. It is alive in its own immense way, shifting, rearranging, reshaping itself through spans of time so long that human memory can barely brush their edges. But before we dive into tectonic plates and ancient oceans, let's stay here a little longer in this calm space. Let's ease into the thought, the image, rather than rush. You don't need to hold every detail. Just let the word itself, Pangaea, float in your imagination like a stone dropped into still water, its ripples spreading slowly. Try whispering it in your mind. Pangaea. A word that sounds both strange and ancient, like a secret passed down through the stones of the earth. Now perhaps you're wondering why such an old idea matters to us tonight. Why should we care about a landmass that came together some 300 million years ago and broke apart nearly 100 million years later? The truth is, Pangaea is more than history carved into rocks. It is a key to understanding how our world became what it is. Every coastline, every mountain range, every ocean current is in some way a child of Pangaea's assembly and its eventual fracture. Without it, the Earth would be arranged differently, and life, your life, mine, every species we know, might not have unfolded the same way. Still, don't worry. I'm not going to overwhelm you with numbers or hard facts. That's not what we do here. Instead, think of this as a slow evening walk through a museum where each exhibit waits quietly, softly lit, and you're free to linger or to drift past as your mind desires. If you close your eyes, you can even picture Pangaea as a giant puzzle, the pieces of today's continents pressed snugly together. Africa curled against South America, North America resting alongside Europe, India not tucked beneath Asia but far to the south, waiting for its fateful journey. Antarctica not icy and remote, but nestled warmly against Australia and Africa. A world arranged so differently, it would be almost unrecognizable. Take a breath in, hold it gently, let it go. The image of that supercontinent is vast, but you don't need to grasp it all at once. Think of it as a horizon far away, a little hazy, but enough to stir a feeling of awe. In a way, Pangaea is not just about land, it is about time itself. The Earth has seen other supercontinents before, names like Rodinia and Gondwana, and it will likely see more again. Our present arrangement with continents scattered across blue oceans is only temporary. We live in a fleeting chapter of an ancient cycle. To know Pangaea is to be reminded that nothing on this planet is permanent. Not mountains, not seas, not even the very shapes of the continents we take for granted. And that thought, though it might sound unsettling at first, can also be strangely comforting. Because if even continents can drift apart and rejoin, then our own lives, our own changes seem lighter in comparison. A move to a new city, the passing of seasons, the shifts of relationships, they are echoes, small reflections of the Earth's grander rhythm. What feels monumental to us is part of a pattern far older and larger than ourselves. So tonight, as we begin this journey into the strange truth of Pangaea, I invite you to think not of science as heavy or rigid, but as gentle, as a story told by stones and oceans, one that has been waiting patiently for hundreds of millions of years for us to notice. The Earth doesn't hurry, and neither will we. Listen, if you like, to the quiet around you. Maybe there's the low hum of an appliance, the distant murmur of cars, or simply silence broken only by your own breath. Imagine now those sounds fading, replaced by the hush of ancient winds sweeping across a continent so vast you could walk for months without reaching its edge. Imagine the smell of conifer forests, stretching endlessly, rivers carving paths across plains, mountains rising in ranges far higher than the Alps or Rockies. This was not the Earth we know, and yet it was still our home. When geologists speak of Pangaea, they don't just see land masses. They see the fingerprints of deep time etched into rocks, echoed in fossils found oceans apart yet perfectly aligned in their story. A fern fossil in Brazil that matches one in South Africa, a mountain chain in North America that continues in Scotland. These are whispers of a time when separation did not exist. The planet held its breath, pulling everything together in one colossal embrace. As you drift with this thought, let the edges of your imagination blur. You don't need to picture it sharply. Just let the feeling of wholeness rest with you. A world without division, without distance, without the vast oceans we now know. One land, one Earth. And perhaps in a quiet way, that is why Pangaea speaks to us. Because we too feel divided. We speak different languages. We live in different nations. We imagine ourselves separate. Yet deep down we share the same ground, the same origin, the same fragile home. Pangaea reminds us that once long ago this was not just metaphor, it was reality. The Earth itself was whole. So as you settle into this night, let that thought accompany you. The world has changed before, and will change again. Continents wander like slow dancers on a floor of molten stone. Oceans open and close like pages in a book, and through it all life continues, adapts, and finds a way. Here in this quiet space, you don't need to solve the mysteries. You don't need to hold every fact. Just rest with the knowledge that you are part of a story that began long before you and will continue long after. A story written in continents and oceans, in drift and fracture, in unity and separation. The story of Pangaea. Take another slow breath. Feel the air. Fill your chest. Let it go gently. And as we move forward, remember this is not a race. This is a slow unfolding, a gentle exploration, a place where curiosity gets to be cozy and science takes the scenic route towards sleep. Sweet dreams are still a way off, but for now we walk softly into the age of Pangaea. What if all the land you've ever known, all the continents you've seen traced on maps and globes, were never separate at all? What if they were once joined together in a single sweep, pressed side by side in a way that would make today's world feel like scattered fragments? And what if that ancient whole, that forgotten body of the Earth, still whispers its story through the stones beneath our feet? That's our question tonight. Not to prove, not to argue, but to wonder. What if Pangaea was more than just an old arrangement of land masses? What if it holds truths about connection change and the strange rhythm of the planet itself? When we think of the world, we usually picture borders, blue oceans dividing green continents. We imagine flights that stretch across the Atlantic ships, tracing the Pacific lines on maps marking the boundaries of nations. Distance feels natural. Separation feels permanent. But the Earth is older than maps, older than borders, older even than the oceans we know. Once it gathered itself into one, a unity so immense that no human alive could truly picture it without closing their eyes and letting imagination stretch wider than the horizon. The thought lingers, doesn't it? If all land was once one, what does that mean for us living now on its scattered pieces? Did separation shape us, make us different, keep us apart? Or is there still somewhere deep inside a memory of unity, a pull toward connection that echoes the way continents themselves long to drift back together. You might find yourself, even now, tracing the outlines of continents in your mind. Africa curving into South America, like pieces of a puzzle once joined. North America brushing against Europe, their ancient mountains still telling of the time they leaned against one another. India, that restless traveller, not yet colliding with Asia to raise the Himalayas, but floating southward, waiting. Could it be that the world is not random but patterned, that what we see as separate is really just a phase in an older story? This question, what if Pangaea still matters, is not about dates or diagrams, it's about perspective, about letting ourselves imagine the Earth not as a set of fixed shapes but as a living, shifting canvas. And when you think of it this way, everything begins to feel less certain but also more connected. What if the forests you walk in today carry the memory of being once joined to distant lands? What if the rocks beneath your city began their story thousands of miles away, pressed against strangers that are now entire continents apart? What if even the winds and rains, the currents of ocean and air, are still shaped by the ghost of Pangaea's unity? There is a quiet beauty in that thought, because it means we are not just where we are now. We are also where we once were. The land beneath your feet is not only local soil, it is part of a journey millions of years in the making, a fragment of something vast. Think about it. Every border, every coastline, every division that feels so solid and permanent is in fact temporary. If continents can drift, then separation is never final. Unity is never lost. The Earth is patient, and it writes its stories not in years but in millions of years. Does that thought bring comfort? For some it does. For others, perhaps unease. But either way, it opens a door in the mind. Because if the ground itself is moving, what else do we take for permanent that is not? If Pangaea can break apart and perhaps one day reform in a new way, then maybe our own lives, our own struggles and divisions are not as fixed as we fear. So tonight the question we carry is not just, what was Pangaea, but what does Pangaea mean for us? Is it only a fossil of geology, or is it also a mirror showing us how wholeness and separation, union and fracture are part of every story, planetary and personal alike? Let your thoughts wander there. No need for sharp answers, no need for certainty. Just notice the way the idea itself feels. A world once whole, a world broken into pieces, and the possibility that both states, the togetherness and the apartness, are natural, inevitable, even necessary. Take a slow breath. In, out. Let the words drift the way continents drift, softly, almost unnoticeably, but always moving. Asking what if is not about reaching the end of a thought. It's about opening it. Pangaea, in this sense, is not only a chapter of Earth's past, it is also a question about Earth's present and its future. What if continents are not done moving? What if one day, millions of years from now, there will be another supercontinent, another great gathering of land? And what if someone or something living then looks back at us the way we look back at Pangaea, wondering what it felt like to live in the time of separation, in the age between unities? The scale is almost dizzying, isn't it? And yet here we are, lying in the quiet, listening, letting the mind stretch gently across eons. You don't need to hold every detail. Just let the question linger in the air. What if Pangaea is more than history? What if it is a truth about the Earth itself and about us? For now, we won't try to answer. We'll let the question sit like a candle flickering in a dark room. Its light is enough to guide the next steps of our journey. Before we drift deeper into the story of Pangaea, let's pause here together for a gentler moment. Because stories about continents and oceans are not only about stone and time, they are also about you right now listening. And it matters where you are, how you feel, and what you bring into this quiet space. So let me ask you, where are you listening from this evening? Maybe you're stretched out in bed, the blankets soft and warm around you. Maybe you're sitting in a chair with the dim glow of a lamp on the wall. Or maybe you're lying on the couch, earbuds in, letting the world fade just enough so that words can flow without effort. Take a second to notice your surroundings. Is there a clock ticking nearby? The hum of a refrigerator in the kitchen? The soft patter of rain against glass? Each of those sounds can feel like the earth reminding you of its own rhythms, its slow and steady movements, not so different from the drifting of continents. You are part of that rhythm too. Let your body settle into whatever posture feels natural. If you want, you can shift, stretch, or find the position that makes you feel most at ease. There is no right or wrong way to listen. You don't need to hold still like a statue. You don't need to focus with sharp attention. All you need is to let the words come and go like waves, some brushing close, others receding quietly into the background. In a way, this is what Pangaea itself teaches us, that presence doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply being here, existing, touching, without effort. Millions of years ago, continents didn't rush to collide. They drifted silently, patiently, until one day they were together. Tonight you can do the same. Drift without hurry into a calmer state. And while you do that, let me offer a small invitation. If you find these journeys soothing, if you enjoy wandering through deep time in a way that slows the mind and softens the edges of the day, it would mean a lot if you gently tapped like or subscribed. Not as an obligation, but as a way of keeping this little corner of curiosity alive. The more people who find these quiet explorations, the more we can continue to make them. Think of it less as clicking a button and more as leaving a pebble on a trail, a sign to others that they can follow if they wish. But again, there's no pressure. These journeys are here whether you do or not. The Earth doesn't require our approval to spin, and Pangaea didn't need an audience to exist. This channel, this space, tries to follow that example, moving quietly, patiently, offering something for whoever happens to wander in. Now, back to you. Maybe you're already beginning to notice your breath. If so, that's perfect. Feel the gentle rise and fall, the way air fills and empties, steady and familiar. Breathing is one of the simplest things we do, and yet it is the closest reminder that we are connected to this planet. Every breath you take carries molecules that once drifted through ancient forests, across mountains, even across the supercontinent itself. In a very literal way, you are breathing fragments of Pangaea. Doesn't that thought make the present feel a little larger? You, in your room, in your chair or bed, are sharing air with the memory of a world long vanished. And if that feels too big to hold, you don't need to hold it tightly. Just let it rest nearby like a soft pillow at the edge of your awareness. I wonder, are your eyes open or closed right now? If they're closed, notice the darkness behind your eyelids. If they're open, let your gaze soften. You don't need to focus on the words on the screen or the details of your surroundings. You can let your vision blur the way landscapes blur from the window of a slow train. Because here, listening, you are a traveler too. You are moving even if you feel still. The earth spins beneath you. Time drifts around you. And tonight, your mind will wander with the story of Pangaea, carried gently by sound and imagination. Let me ask one more thing. How are you feeling right now? Not the answer you'd give in a quick conversation, but the honest, quiet truth. Tired, perhaps, or restless, or calm. Whatever it is, it belongs here. There is no need to fix it. Just as continents are allowed to drift without being rushed, you are allowed to feel however you feel in this moment. Sometimes we imagine that listening to a story should mean paying close attention, holding every fact in memory. But not here. Here, listening is more like floating. If you drift in and out, if your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's expected. Stories like this are not exams. They are rivers, and you are simply carried along. And maybe, just maybe, as you float, you'll notice a thought brushing against you. Something small, the feel of your pillow, the sound of the air outside the memory of a place you've once traveled. Each of those is like a continent fragment, drifting across the ocean of your awareness, touching, parting, returning. That is the rhythm of both the earth and the mind. So before we step back into deep time, let's breathe together once more. In through the nose, slow and steady. Hold it lightly as if cradling a fragile stone, and let it go soft as wind across a plain. Feel your shoulders release, your jaw unclench, your body sink a little deeper into comfort. Wherever you are, however you feel, you are part of this journey now. And Pangaea, strange, immense and long gone, will be the ground we walk upon, if only in imagination. And so as the words continue, let yourself rest in that sense of belonging. You are here and that is enough. The story will carry itself. When we talk about Pangaea, we are not simply talking about land. We are talking about time. Time so immense, so beyond the ordinary clock on your wall that even the word ancient feels far too small. Tonight, let's step into that time together gently, the way one might wade into the edge of the sea. Imagine holding a single human lifetime in your hand. Maybe 80 years, maybe a little more. Enough time for generations to rise and fall, for families to stretch across centuries. To us, 80 years feels vast, weighty, nearly endless. But in the language of the earth, it is less than a blink. It is a grain of sand in an hourglass the size of the sky. Now imagine placing that grain of sand beside another, say the length of all of recorded history. Every king, every queen, every explorer and artist, every invention and every war. Roughly 10,000 years. Long enough for pyramids to be built, for empires to rise, for books to be written and forgotten. And yet even that entire sweep of history is only a breath compared to what we're about to touch. Because to reach Pangaea, we need to travel back not thousands of years, not even millions, but hundreds of millions. Around 300 million years ago, the Earth looked very different. Continents that are today separated by entire oceans pressed close together, forming one vast expanse of land. That number 300 million can be difficult to hold, so let's make it smaller. Picture a single second. Now picture 1,000,000 seconds. That is about 12 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds. 31 years. 300 million years. It is so far beyond counting that the mind can hardly stretch around it. And yet it is not imaginary. It is real. It is carved into rocks, into fossils, into the very fabric of the earth beneath your feet. Deep time is like a slow, endless river carrying continents as though they were drifting boats. We tend to imagine the ground as steady, immovable. But the truth is the continents are always moving, carried by currents of molten rock beneath the crust. Slowly, silently, almost invisibly they wander. At times they come together as they did in Pangaea. At times they part, drifting into the shapes we now know. If you could watch the earth from far above, not for a day or a year, but for hundreds of millions of years, you would see the continents sliding like puzzle pieces across a blue table. You would see them collide with a patience so deep it looks like stillness. Mountains would rise in slow motion only to wear away grain by grain. Oceans would open close and open again. Volcanoes would flare and fade. Whole species would appear thrive and vanish without leaving more than a trace. And all of this would happen before a single human ever walked upon the land. This is the scale of deep time, the backdrop against which Pangaea lived and breathed. To hold it in mind is humbling. It tells us that the earth is not a stage built only for us. It has been shaping and reshaping itself for billions of years, long before we arrived, and it will continue long after. But don't let that thought feel heavy. Instead, let it feel like floating. Let it remind you that the pressure of daily life, deadlines, errands, small anxieties, are just moments in the rhythm of something much greater. The earth has weathered storms larger than we can imagine, and yet here it is spinning quietly, carrying us through space, providing air to breathe, ground to stand on, oceans to dream beside. What's most astonishing about deep time is how it changes our sense of scale. Think of a mountain near where you live, perhaps one you've seen from a distance. To you it feels eternal, immovable. Yet in deep time that mountain is just a ripple in stone destined to crumble into dust. Think of an ocean wide and endless. In deep time, it is a temporary basin destined to shift, to vanish, to return in another form. Even continents themselves, which we treat as permanent, are wanderers. They meet, they part, they dance across the mantle in slow, endless steps. To imagine Pangaea is to step into that dance, to see not just where the continents are now, but where they have been and where they might yet go. Sometimes, when I picture deep time, I imagine standing on a quiet beach at night. The waves roll in and out. The stars wheel slowly overhead. And beneath my feet, the sand carries the memory of ages, each grain a fragment of stone that was once a mountain, once part of a continent, once pressed together in Pangaea. In that moment, the boundary between past and present fades. You realize you are not separate from deep time. You are inside it, a note in its endless song. And perhaps this is why Pangaea captures the imagination, because it is not only a fact of geology, it is a reminder that the Earth has lived many lives, and that ours is just one of them. A reminder that what feels eternal is always changing, and what feels separate was once united. So as we move further into the story of Pangaea, let's keep this perspective close. Not as something overwhelming, but as something gentle. Deep time is not meant to intimidate. It is meant to soothe, to remind us that change is natural, that patience is powerful, and that even the greatest fractures can one day return to wholeness. Take a slow breath in, let it out. Imagine the continents drifting millimeter by millimeter over millions of years. Imagine Pangaea forming not with thunder or violence, but with quiet inevitability. Imagine yourself small but significant part of the same Earth that has carried these movements for billions of years. The clock on your wall ticks seconds. The Earth ticks in epochs. And tonight we get to listen to that slower clock to feel the weight and the lightness of deep time. To begin to understand Pangaea, we need to understand the quiet machinery that built it. The Earth is not a still, lifeless rock. It is restless, though its movements are slow enough that to our eyes the ground seems steady. Beneath the crust, the skin of the Earth, lies the mantle, a vast sea of hot flowing rock. Not liquid in the way water is liquid, but soft and yielding, able to creep and shift over unimaginable spans of time. This hidden motion is the engine of continents. Scientists call the theory plate tectonics. It's one of the most important frameworks in modern geology, and yet it describes something both simple and profound. The crust of the Earth is broken into giant plates like pieces of a puzzle. These plates float atop the mantle, and they move ever so slowly, sometimes only a few centimeters per year. That might sound trivial, the length of a fingernail, but over millions of years it is enough to rearrange oceans and build mountains taller than Everest. Think of it this way. If you placed two ice sheets side by side on a pond and let them drift, they would slowly bump, grind, or slide past one another. The Earth's plates behave in much the same way, though the scale is vast beyond measure. When plates pull apart, oceans open. When they crash together, mountains rise. And when many plates drift into each other's arms, the land gathers, forming supercontinents like Pangaea. The word supercontinent might sound like science fiction, but it's simply a description of what happens when most or all of Earth's landmasses are joined into one. Pangaea is the most famous, but it was not the first, nor will it be the last. Geologists believe that before Pangaea, there were others, Rodinia, Nuna, perhaps Columbia. Each formed, lasted for tens or hundreds of millions of years, then broke apart again, releasing continents back into the slow dance of drift. It is a cycle repeating over and over, a heartbeat of deep time. Let's pause with that thought. A heartbeat. The Earth has one, though it beats not in seconds but in hundreds of millions of years. Contract, bringing land together. Expand, breaking it apart. Pangaea was one such contraction, a moment in the planet's endless rhythm. But how do we know this? After all, no human eyes ever saw Pangaea. It vanished nearly 175 million years before we appeared. The evidence lies in the clues left behind, clues written into stone like a diary of the Earth. Look at a map. Notice how the coastlines of Africa and South America seem to fit together like puzzle pieces pulled apart. That's not coincidence. When we look beneath the oceans, we find matching patterns of rock along those coasts as if they were once a single seam. Fossils tell the same story. Ferns, known as Glossopteris, appear in both South America and Africa, even though oceans now divide them. Ancient reptiles too show up in far-flung continents that would have been neighbors in Pangaea's embrace. Mountains also bear witness. The Appalachian Range in North America aligns with ranges in Scotland and Scandinavia like fragments of a broken chain. Together they whisper, "We were once one." The oceans themselves add another layer of proof. At the center of the Atlantic lies a ridge, a scar where new crust is born as plates pull apart. It is as if the Earth itself has stretched, splitting what was once joined and leaving behind a seam that continues to widen even now. So the science tells us this continents move slowly but surely. They gather, they part, and sometimes they unite into giants. Pangaea was such a giant. To picture it, imagine standing at the center of a landmass so vast you could walk for years and never see the sea. Forests spread across endless plains, rivers carved through mountains, deserts stretched wider than any today. Life flourished, strange and familiar early reptiles, towering trees, insects buzzing in air thicker with oxygen than our own. It was a world both alien and foundational, the stage upon which much of Earth's later life would evolve. But the heart of this part of our journey is not just the details of creatures or climates. It is the idea itself, that the ground beneath us is not fixed, that it moves, reshapes, reinvents itself. This is the foundation of geology. The Earth is alive with motion, and Pangaea is proof of it. Pause here for a moment. Feel the floor beneath you. It seems steady, unmoving. Yet beneath, far beneath, the mantle stirs. Slowly, invisibly, continents creep. Right now, as you listen, Africa is inching northward toward Europe. The Atlantic is widening. The Pacific is shrinking. In millions of years, the world map will look nothing like today's Paris. That's the strange truth: the Earth never holds still. There is something calming in that thought, because if even the continents drift, then change is the most natural thing in the world. Our lives may feel unsteady, uncertain, but in that we are not alone. We are part of a planet that has always been in motion, always reshaping itself. Plate tectonics explains much: earthquakes, volcanoes, the rise of mountains, the birth of oceans. But it also tells us something more subtle, that the Earth has patterns, that beneath apparent chaos lies a slow, patient order. The continents do not move randomly. They follow currents, cycles, rhythms. They wander, but they wander together. And so to understand Pangaea is to understand the foundation of our planet's story. Without plate tectonics, there is no supercontinent. Without drift, there is no separation, no diversity of life shaped by isolation, no familiar map of the world. Everything we know, every coastline, every climate, every ecosystem traces back to the deep, slow movements of the Earth's crust. Take another breath. Let it be slow, steady. Imagine the continents beneath your imagination sliding softly across the globe. Imagine them drifting together, pressing into each other, forming one. That is Pangaea. Not a myth, not a guess, but a chapter in the Earth's diary, written in rock and fossil, waiting for us to read. And as we close this part of our journey, hold this thought gently: the ground you walk on is not fixed. It is a traveller, a wanderer, and you, in your brief lifetime, are part of its endless voyage. When we think about Pangaea, the mind often turns straight to science: tectonic plates, fossils, mountains, torn apart and rejoined. But before geologists gave the supercontinent its name, before we had maps or models to explain it, human beings had already been asking questions about unity and separation. They did not speak of Pangaea, of course, but they spoke of the Earth as once whole, as once joined, as once alive, in a way that feels strangely familiar to what we now know. Across cultures, myths of a single land, a single mother, Earth echo like faint songs across time. It is as though people long before modern science looked at the scattered continents and the endless sea between them and wondered, were we always apart, or were we once together, part of a whole that we have since forgotten in Greek mythology? Gaia, the Earth itself, was the primordial mother, the source from which mountains and seas, gods and mortals all arose. Gaia was not divided into fragments of land. She was one body, whole and indivisible. The later idea of Pangaea takes its very name from this mythic figure Pan, meaning all, and Gaia the Earth. To speak of Pangaea is to echo that ancient image of the world as a single mother holding everything close. In Hindu cosmology, the Earth is carried on the back of a great cosmic turtle, or sometimes elephants standing atop that turtle's shell. The imagery is not meant to be literal, but symbolic of stability of the world, as one platform upon which all life rests, a single foundation unified, moving slowly through the vastness of time. It mirrors in a poetic way what geologists later discovered, that the ground itself drifts, supported by forces beneath steady yet in motion. In Norse tradition there is the story of Ymir, the primordial giant whose body became the earth. His flesh, the land, his blood, the sea, his bones, the mountains, his skull, the sky. Again, the earth is not seen as divided into scattered pieces, but as one being whole and alive. To walk upon the land was in a sense to walk upon the body of a single giant. Indigenous stories around the world also hold echoes of this unity. The Haudenosaunee people speak of Sky Woman falling to a vast unbroken expanse of water and of the great turtle rising to bear the land upon its back. In Australia, the Dreamtime stories tell of the land as sacred and eternal, shaped by ancestral beings, whose journeys left behind mountains, rivers and plains, all part of one living canvas. Even in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, there is a verse that says, "And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. One place, one land. Not many scattered continents, but a single mass rising from the sea." Whether metaphor or memory, the idea lingers the earth was once whole. What's fascinating is not to argue that these stories predicted Pangaea, but to notice the resonance. Humans across cultures seem to sense that the world we see is not the world as it always was. They intuited that unity comes before division, that the earth carries older shapes within it. Myths gave those intuitions a face, a voice, a story, and what of symbols? Consider the circle, one of the oldest shapes used in human art. It appears in mandalas, in Celtic knots, in petroglyphs, scratched onto stone by hands thousands of years ago. The circle has no beginning and no end, no breaks or divisions. It represents wholeness, totality, unity. In its own way, Pangaea was a circle too, a gathering of land around a centre, an unbroken sweep before time pulled it apart. Think also of the tree, another universal symbol. The Norse Yggdrasil, the tree of life. In many cultures, the Bodhi tree under which the Buddha reached enlightenment. Trees connect sky to ground branches, spreading while roots hold firm. They are singular, yet they contain multitudes, leaves, branches, birds, insects, all in one living body. To imagine Pangaea is to imagine such a tree, not of wood but of stone continents, as branches once held together, later separated, but still belonging to the same trunk. Even dragons and serpents, so common in myths, can be read as symbols of the earth's shifting. They twist, coil and circle upon themselves. They represent cycles, creation and destruction, beginnings and endings tied together. In some traditions, the world serpent encircles the earth, entirely binding it as one. Could that not be another echo of unity of land encircled before it broke apart? For ancient peoples, the sea was often a symbol of chaos. To cross an ocean was to cross into the unknown, to lose sight of land and risk being swallowed. But if all land were once joined, as in the time of Pangaea, then the sea would not have divided as it does now. Perhaps that is why so many myths speak longingly of unity, of golden ages when people were not scattered across distances. Perhaps deep down there was an ancestral memory of a world before oceans stretched so wide. Of course, myths are not geology, but they serve another purpose. They tell us how humans feel about unity and separation. To speak of one earth, one land, is to speak of belonging, of home, of connection. To speak of separation is to speak of exile, of distance, of longing. Pangaea then becomes more than a geological event. It becomes a symbol of wholeness, a reminder that the divisions we see now are not eternal. And isn't it curious that even today in modern culture, the idea of unity is often drawn with maps? We dream of a world without borders, a global community, a shared humanity. These dreams echo the same intuition that myths once held, that separation is temporary, that unity is possible, that perhaps we long for what the earth itself once embodied. So as you listen tonight, let your mind wander not just through science, but through story. Imagine the earth not as dead stone, but as a living figure, a mother, a turtle, a giant, a serpent. Imagine continents not as isolated, but as branches of the same body leaves of the same tree. Imagine the sea not as a divider, but as a blanket spread around one land. Whether or not ancient people knew of Pangaea, their stories touched the same truth. The Earth has been many things, and wholeness is always part of its memory. And so in Pangaea we find not only fossils and rocks, but also myths and metaphors. Together they remind us that science and story are not enemies. They are two ways of reaching for the same mystery. The mystery of how the Earth was and how it still is beneath the surface. When we talk about Pangaea, it can sound like an abstract concept, a map rearranged in the mind. But geology doesn't work in abstractions alone. The Earth leaves clues tangible and quiet, pressed into its layers like ink on ancient parchment. To see Pangaea clearly, we need to look at these clues, specific case studies where the stones, the fossils, and even the coastlines still whisper of the time when the continents were one. Let's start with the most obvious clue, the fit of the continents themselves. Look at a modern globe, trace the bulge of Brazil and the curve of West Africa, and you'll notice how they seem to match. It's like taking apart a puzzle and realizing even years later that the edges still align. This is not coincidence. When Alfred Wegener, a German scientist, first suggested in the early 20th century that continents drift, he pointed to this very pattern. People laughed at first. They said the idea was fanciful, impossible. But the pieces of the puzzle were too clear to ignore. Over time, evidence would gather until the laughter faded into recognition. The continents do move, and they were once joined. But coastlines alone are not proof. They can change through erosion, through rising seas, through the carving of rivers. To strengthen the case, scientists looked deeper into fossils. One plant in particular, Glossopteris, became a star witness. This fern-like plant lived around 250 to 300 million years ago, spreading across what are now South America, Africa, Antarctica, India, and Australia. Today, these lands are separated by oceans thousands of miles wide. But in the age of Pangaea, they were neighbors. The presence of Glossopteris in all these regions is like finding the same signature scrawled across scattered pages of a torn book. Animals, too, told their stories. The reptile Mesosaurus lived in freshwater environments during the early Permian period. Fossils of this small creature have been found in both South America and southern Africa. There is no way such a fragile reptile could have swum across the salty Atlantic. The only explanation is that the lands where it once lived were joined. Pangaea was not just theory, it was the stage upon which these animals lived their ordinary lives. Mountains offer another kind of proof. If you stand in the Appalachians of North America and then travel to the Caledonian Mountains of Scotland and Scandinavia, you are standing on pieces of the same ancient chain. Long ago, these ranges were part of one continuous spine of stone raised. When continents collided, later torn apart, when the Atlantic Ocean opened. The rocks themselves match in age, in composition, in structure. They are like two halves of a sentence separated but still carrying the same meaning. Even the oceans reveal their secrets. The Atlantic hides a scar down its middle, the mid-Atlantic ridge. Here new crust is born as magma rises and cools, pushing plates apart. This ridge is the very seam where Pangaea tore open. The ocean we know today is young, geologically speaking, born from the fracture of the supercontinent. To sail across it is in a way to sail across the memory of Pangaea's breaking. And then there is Antarctica. Today it is a frozen desert, silent and white, but fossils buried beneath its ice tell another story. They reveal forests of towering trees, plants that needed warmth, and light creatures that could not have survived in today's polar cold. Antarctica, in the time of Pangaea, was not isolated at the bottom of the world. It was nestled against other continents, part of a larger whole bathed in climates, far different from what we imagine now. Its ice hides a memory of green. Together these case studies form a tapestry, coastlines that match, fossils that appear in far-flung lands, mountain ranges that stretch invisibly across oceans, ocean ridges that mark the tearing of land, Antarctica's buried forests. Each clue is like a thread, and when you weave them together they create a picture too clear to dismiss. But what's perhaps most beautiful is how these clues remind us that science is not about certainty at first glance. When Wegener first proposed continental drift, he did not have the mechanism. He couldn't explain how continents could move. He simply noticed the patterns. It took decades, and the discovery of plate tectonics for the full explanation to emerge. In that sense, the story of Pangaea is not only about the Earth, but about human curiosity, about how we notice, how we doubt, how we slowly piece together the vast puzzle of time. Think of it: a fossil leaf pressed into stone in South Africa, another nearly identical pressed into stone in India, a reptile skeleton buried in Brazil, its twin buried in Namibia. These are not just relics, they are messages. They say we were together once. The land you stand on was not always apart. The oceans you see as eternal are temporary. The earth has changed and will change again. Now, let your mind soften. You don't need to hold every name, every detail. Just let the idea settle. The proof of Pangaea is everywhere if you know how to listen. The continents themselves speak through their shapes. The fossils speak through their echoes. The mountains speak through their broken chains. The oceans speak through their ridges. And beneath it all, the mantle stirs moving pieces slowly into place, as it has always done. There is a kind of poetry in that, isn't there? That stone, silent and heavy, can still tell a story. That fossils, small and fragile, can survive long enough to bridge continents. That even the frozen silence of Antarctica hides the memory of forests. Science gives us the language to understand these things, but wonder gives us the patience to listen. So when you next look at a map, don't just see divisions, countries, borders, oceans. See the hidden seams. See the puzzle pieces waiting to be rejoined. See the memory of Pangaea beneath the surface. It is still there, written in the earth, waiting quietly like a secret that doesn't mind being forgotten because it knows it will one day be rediscovered. And as you rest tonight, let that thought accompany you. The ground beneath you is older than memory, older than myth. It carries within it the proof of a world once whole, a world whose fragments we now inhabit. You are part of that story too, walking upon land that once touched lands now far away. Pangaea is not gone. It lingers in the rocks, in the fossils, in the gentle drift of the continents themselves. When we step back from the science of Pangaea, the fossils, the ridges, the drifting plates, something else begins to emerge. Something less about stone and more about meaning. Because every time the earth reminds us that it once held all land together and then slowly pulled it apart, we can't help but hear echoes of our own lives. What does it mean to live on a planet that unites, then divides, then unites again? What can we, as fragile, brief creatures, learn from this slow, patient rhythm of continents? Think for a moment about connection. For hundreds of millions of years, Pangaea was a place of closeness. Plants and animals spread across vast regions without ocean barriers. A fern could grow in what is now South America and stretch easily into Africa. A reptile could wander from present-day India into Antarctica without ever crossing a sea. That unity is part of Earth's story. And then separation. Oceans opening mountains, rising species, diverging climates, changing. Wholeness giving way to difference. Isn't that a pattern we know in our own lives? There are times when everything feels joined, family gathered at a table, friends close by, communities bound together. And then as time passes, separation happens. People move. Borders are drawn. Lives diverge. We scatter like continents drifting apart. Yet the memory of togetherness lingers like the fit of Africa, against South America like the matching fossils across oceans. We know we were once close. This rhythm can feel painful. To lose connection is hard. But Pangaea whispers something gentler. Separation does not mean the end. It means transformation. When continents broke apart, new oceans formed, new climates emerged, new species evolved, diversity blossomed out of fracture. Perhaps our own separations carry the same seed, that difference, distance, and change can create new life, new beauty, new ways of being. Another lesson lies in patience. The drift of continents is so slow it can hardly be measured in a single lifetime. A few centimeters a year, imperceptible to anyone who isn't measuring carefully. Yet given time, those centimeters become oceans. Mountains rise from quiet collisions. Valleys form from the soft pull of plates. The message is clear: even the smallest movements, if carried steadily over time, can reshape the world. How often do we long for change overnight? We want answers, progress, resolution now. Yet the Earth reminds us that real transformation is often gradual. You might take one small step today and another tomorrow, and feel as though nothing is different. But in the rhythm of deep time, you are drifting towards something vast. You may not see the ocean opening, but the path is there beneath your feet. There is also humility in Pangaea's story. To realize that continents themselves are temporary is to realize that nothing we build is permanent. Our cities, our nations, even our names for the land are fleeting compared to geological time. Mountains crumble, oceans close, continents collide. What feels unshakable is only passing through. Yet instead of despair, that truth can bring peace. If even the ground beneath us is not fixed, why should we expect our lives to be? Change is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. The Earth is a master of impermanence, and Pangaea is one of its grand reminders. There's a kind of quiet comfort in knowing that we are part of something so much larger. Our struggles, our separations, our longings, they are not isolated. They mirror the very movements of the planet. When you feel apart from someone, when you feel distance or loneliness, remember the continents too have felt this. They once held each other, then drifted, and yet they remain part of one Earth carried together through space. You too remain part of a whole. Another thought: unity does not erase difference. Even when Pangaea held all land together, it was not a featureless plain. Mountains rose, rivers carved valleys, deserts stretched across vast interiors, forests grew in strange climates. Life did not pause while the land was united. It adapted, thrived, changed. In the same way, human unity does not mean sameness. We can be together and still diverse, joined yet individual. Pangaea is a reminder that unity can hold multitudes, and perhaps there is a spiritual echo here as well. Many traditions teach of a golden age, a time when everything was one before separation brought division and struggle. Pangaea might be a geological counterpart to that mythic memory, a reminder that wholeness is part of the Earth's DNA, that beneath all division lies the possibility of unity. So what do we carry from this into our own lives? Maybe it is simply this: to move gently with change, to honor connection when we have it, to accept separation when it comes, and to trust that even distance can lead to new life. To live as continents, live slowly, patiently, always moving, always transforming. Take a moment now to breathe that in. Inhale, as if drawing the memory of unity. Exhale, as if releasing into change. Feel the rise and fall, the closeness and distance mirrored in your own body. You are not separate from these rhythms. You are part of them. And as you rest tonight, remember that your story is woven into the story of the Earth. You are not standing on lifeless ground. You are carried on a planet that unites and divides, that drifts and reforms, that knows impermanence and beauty in equal measure. Pangaea may be gone, but its lessons remain. And one of those lessons is this: nothing is truly lost. Continents may drift apart, but they remain parts of the same Earth. People may drift apart, but they remain parts of the same humanity. Wholeness is not destroyed by separation. It is only hidden for a time, waiting patiently to return. It's one thing to talk about Pangaea as history written in stone, and another to notice how its rhythms echo in our own lives. Let's take this part of our journey slowly, not racing through facts, but pausing to feel what Pangaea has to say to us as individuals here and now. Close your eyes if you like, and think about the spaces you move through each day. Perhaps it's the familiar path from your bedroom to the kitchen, the way your shoes sound against the sidewalk outside, the hum of traffic, the chatter of neighbors, the laughter of a child in a nearby yard. Each of these is a fragment of your daily continent, the land you inhabit without needing to name it. Now imagine those fragments drifting apart. A friend moving to another city, a family member living oceans away, a favorite cafe closing its doors. Suddenly, the familiar map of your life feels broken, scattered like continents pulling away from one another. Haven't we all felt that drift? That slow realization that what was once together no longer is, and yet the story of Pangaea tells us this separation is natural. It is not failure. It is part of how the world renews itself. When the continents divided, they didn't vanish. They became new lands, new ecosystems, new possibilities. Out of separation came diversity, richness, life beyond imagining. In the same way, when our own lives drift apart, when friends move on, when chapters close, it is not the end of connection, but the beginning of transformation. Think of your own personal fossils. Maybe it's a letter tucked in a drawer, a photograph curled at the edges, a song that takes you back instantly to a summer long gone. These are the traces of a unity you once had. Just like Glossopteris leaves pressed into stone, they whisper, "We were together once." And though oceans of time now separate us, the memory endures. Perhaps tonight you can bring to mind a moment of wholeness in your own story. Maybe it was a dinner with loved ones where everything felt easy, or a childhood memory of playing under the same roof with siblings, or a simple afternoon when you felt completely at home. Those moments are your Pangaea, the times when your personal continents touched, when everything that mattered was gathered in one place. And then, as always, life shifted. Just as continents began to drift, so too did you. People grew older, choices carried them to new places, oceans of circumstance widened. You may feel the ache of that distance even now. But remember, what the earth teaches distance is not absence. The land is still here. The story continues. Pause for a breath. Inhale gently. Exhale slowly. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. In that rhythm, notice something: closeness and distance, unity and separation happening in each cycle. Breath joins you with the world around you, then releases you back into it. It is a constant reminder that change is not to be feared. It is the natural motion of life. Think also of the small cracks and seams in your own life, the way a wall may show a thin line from settling, the way a mug might carry a chip on its rim. These are not flaws so much as reminders of movement. The earth has cracks too: fault lines, rifts, ridges. They are the places where creation happens, where new land is born, where oceans begin. Could your own cracks be the same evidence, not of breaking, but of becoming? Even loneliness, when it comes, has something to share with Pangaea. Imagine standing on the shore of an ocean that did not exist 100 million years ago. The waves crash endless and wide, and you feel small, separated. But beneath that ocean floor lie rocks that once touched fossils, that once lived side by side. Distance on the surface, closeness in the memory beneath. Loneliness may feel like an ocean, but within it are traces of connection that cannot be erased. You might even notice echoes of Pangaea in the way you dream. Have you ever had dreams where people from different parts of your life, school, work, family appear together in the same scene, as if your subconscious were pulling continents back into one? That is your inner Pangaea reminding you that everything you have experienced still belongs to one whole, even if scattered in waking life. As you rest tonight, you can let yourself feel part of that rhythm. You are not separate from the Earth's story. Your connections, your separations, your memories of unity, they are part of the same dance that moves continents. You are a fragment, yes, but also part of a whole. And maybe, just maybe, there is comfort in that. Comfort in knowing that nothing is ever truly lost. That even when oceans form the puzzle pieces, still remember how they once fit. That even when you feel scattered, you are still carried on one Earth spinning gently through space. So if tonight you are thinking of someone far away, let that thought be like a fossil, a reminder of closeness, proof that connection existed, still etched into the stone of your memory. If you are remembering a time when life felt whole, let it be your personal supercontinent, a Pangaea that still shapes you even now. And if you are feeling change, if continents in your life are drifting, know that you are not alone. The Earth itself has drifted, has broken, has reformed. It has done so countless times, and it will do so again. Change is not the end of the story. It is the way the story continues. Take one more slow breath. Let it carry with it a sense of unity, of wholeness, of belonging. You are part of this planet, part of its ancient rhythm, part of its endless cycle of togetherness and separation. Pangaea is not just history. It is a mirror showing you your own life in stone and ocean and time. And perhaps that is the greatest reflection of all, that the Earth itself whispers what we most need to hear, that we are never truly apart, only drifting, only changing, always still connected beneath the surface. Whenever we tell a story as sweeping as Pangaea, it's important to pause and notice the limits. Science, after all, is not built on certainties carved in stone, but on questions, challenges, and revisions. Just as the continents themselves shift and change, so do our ideas about them. And Pangaea, though widely accepted today, has not always been such a clear picture. When Alfred Wegener first proposed his theory of continental drift in 1912, he was met with sharp criticism. At the time, most geologists believed the continents were fixed, rooted forever in place. The suggestion that they might drift across the surface of the planet sounded almost absurd, like suggesting mountains might float in the sea. Wegener pointed to evidence, fossils, mountain ranges, the fit of coastlines, but critics demanded a mechanism. How could such massive blocks of land possibly move? He could not provide a satisfying answer, and so his ideas were dismissed by many. It took decades before the theory of plate tectonics provided the missing key. With it came the realization that the Earth's crust is fractured into moving plates driven by convection currents in the mantle. Suddenly, what had seemed impossible became not only plausible but inevitable. Pangaea became more than a speculation. It became the centerpiece of a new understanding of geology. But even now, questions remain. For instance, Pangaea was not the first supercontinent. Before it came Rodinia, and before Rodinia, Columbia, and others that are harder to define. How many supercontinents have there been? How exactly did they form and break apart? The record is incomplete, the evidence fragmented. Rocks older than 1 billion years have been reworked, melted, erased by time. Our vision of earlier supercontinents is hazy at best. If we can barely reconstruct them, how certain can we be about the precise shape of Pangaea itself? Some scientists debate whether Pangaea was truly a single unbroken continent, or more of a loose assembly. The traditional image, a perfect jigsaw puzzle of today's continents pressed together, may oversimplify. Boundaries were complex coastlines, shifted microcontinents floated in and out. In reality, Pangaea was less a perfect puzzle and more a living mosaic. There are also debates about the timing. When exactly did Pangaea form? Some place its assembly around 335 million years ago. Others argue for different stages of collision, with pieces joining at different times. And when did it finally break apart? Around 175 million years ago, yes, but the process was not instant. It was drawn out fragment by fragment, ridge by ridge. Oceans do not appear in a day. They widen slowly, invisibly across millions of years. The story of Pangaea is not a single event, but a long unfolding. Another question: what did life experience during this time? Some argue that Pangaea's vast interior created harsh climates, dry, hot deserts far from the moderating influence of the sea. Others suggest that diversity flourished precisely because of these extremes. Fossil records give us glimpses, but they are incomplete. Entire ecosystems may have left little trace. Did Pangaea nurture life, or did it strain it? The truth may be both. And then there is the future. Geologists predict that continents will gather again millions of years from now into a new supercontinent, sometimes called Pangaea Proxima or Amasia, depending on the model. But which path will they take? Will the Atlantic continue to widen, or will it one day close again? Will the Pacific vanish or endure? Our models are educated, guesses, not prophecies. The Earth may surprise us. Even the concept of supercontinent cycles has its challenges. Some scientists argue that the pattern is not as regular as we think. Perhaps there is no strict cycle, only a tendency. Perhaps Pangaea was not inevitable, but one of many possible outcomes. After all, Earth's processes are complex, influenced by factors we may not yet fully grasp. These debates do not weaken the story of Pangaea. They enrich it. They remind us that science is not about final answers, but about exploration. Each new fossil, each rock sample, each seismic reading adds a thread. Some fit neatly into the tapestry, others challenge the pattern, forcing us to look again. It's also worth noting the humility in all of this. We are piecing together a world that existed hundreds of millions of years before us, with only fragments to guide us. Fossils, scattered rocks, altered oceans, hiding their secrets beneath miles of water. We are like archaeologists of a vanished planet trying to reconstruct a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. That we can see Pangaea at all is astonishing. That we continue to argue about its details is natural. And perhaps this is the deeper reflection: certainty is not the goal, wonder is. To stand before the vastness of Earth's history and say, we think this is how it was, while also admitting, but we may be wrong, is a kind of wisdom. It keeps the door open for new discoveries, new perspectives, new ways of seeing. So, as we rest with Pangaea tonight, let's also rest with its uncertainties. Let's honor the scientists who doubted, who questioned, who asked for more proof. Let's honor the gaps in our knowledge, the places where the Earth still holds its secrets. The unknown is not a flaw in the story, it is part of the story. And in our own lives too, perhaps, we can learn from this. We often crave certainty, final answers, maps that never change. But maybe it is enough to live with questions. Maybe it is enough to drift as the continents do toward new shapes we cannot yet imagine. Take a slow breath. Let it out gently. Think of Pangaea, not as a fixed picture, but as a living idea, one that grows, shifts, and evolves as we do. Think of science, not as a book of answers, but as a journey, a voyage across oceans of time, and let that thought bring you peace. Because in the end, whether Pangaea was perfect or messy, early or late, harsh or gentle, it reminds us of the same truth. The Earth is alive with motion, and we are still learning how to listen. Close your eyes for a moment and let yourself imagine. Not the world as it is now, scattered and divided by wide oceans, but the world as it once was, joined, immense, continuous. Welcome to Pangaea. You are standing on a plain so vast that the horizon bends away in every direction. There are no familiar coastlines, no nearby seas to break the land into pieces. Just a sweep of earth that stretches farther than you could walk in a lifetime. The air feels different here, heavy with warmth, touched by winds that have travelled uninterrupted across thousands of miles. Listen closely. What do you hear? Not the familiar sounds of modern life. No engines, no footsteps on concrete, no voices echoing in city streets. Instead, there is the distant rustle of enormous ferns, the creak of towering conifers shifting in the breeze, the faint cheer of insects you have never seen before. Somewhere far away, the call of a reptile rises, a sound strange yet steady, like a croak mixed with a hiss. Above it all, silence deep, ancient silence broken only by the voices of life. Look around you. The colours are both familiar and alien. The sky is blue, yes, but bluer, in a way that feels untouched, as though it has never held smoke or haze. The plants are green, but the greens are sharper, more vivid, because flowers as we know them have not yet arrived. Instead, forests glow with the muted palette of gymnosperms, pines, cycads, ginkgos. No blossoms of red or yellow or purple, only cones and fronds, earthy and primordial. The land itself is painted in ochres and deep browns, deserts sprawling where oceans should have been. Mountains rise in jagged chains, younger and rawer than those we know today, their edges still sharp from recent collisions. Breathe in. The air smells different, thick with resin from endless forests tinged with the mineral tang of nearby volcanoes. Smoke drifts lazily from a distant ridge, carrying with it the scent of sulfur, sharp and metallic. Beneath it, the damp earth releases its own perfume after rain, rich and grounding. It is a world alive, with scents not masked by the traces of modern industry, but raw, elemental and strong. Now feel the ground beneath your feet. The soil is rough, scattered with ferns, soft in some places and cracked in others. If you press your palm to a boulder, you can feel the warmth stored in stone after a long day beneath an ancient sun. Beneath that warmth, there is movement, slow, imperceptible, but there. The land itself is shifting even now as plates press together. You are standing on a stage that is alive. Taste the air on your tongue. It carries a bite of volcanic ash, a whisper of salt carried across vast interiors by ancient winds. It tastes both clean and heavy, as if the atmosphere itself is thicker, more crowded with the breath of forests that stretch across a single endless continent, and above you life is moving. Raise your eyes, and you might see a shadow pass across the sun, A reptile long-limbed and gliding sails overhead, its wings stretched taut across bone. It is not a bird, not yet, but a reminder of what wings were before feathers. Below on the ground, creatures stir, early ancestors of reptiles and mammals, small, quick, cautious. Their movements remind you that this world is not empty. It hums with life, different from ours, but just as determined to thrive. Let's take a slow walk through this imagined land. Step by step, you pass between trees older than any forest you know. Their trunks rise like columns in a cathedral, resin glistening on their bark. The forest floor crunches beneath your feet, layered with fallen needles and ferns. Every now and then, a lizard darts across your path, disappearing into shadow before you can take a second look. As you walk, the air grows hotter. You emerge onto a wide desert plain. Here the wind whips dust into your face, dry and relentless. The land is cracked, barren, stretching without mercy. And yet even here, life persists. Hardy plants cling to the edges of stone, their roots digging deep. In the distance you see shapes moving, perhaps small herds of reptilian creatures adapted to survive the harsh heat. They leave faint trails in the sand, reminders that even the emptiest places are not empty at all. Farther still, the land rises into mountains. Imagine climbing them. The path is steep, jagged. Rocks crumble beneath your hands as you pull yourself higher. When you reach a ridge, the view takes your breath away. Below you lies an unbroken sweep of land, forest, desert, plain, and river, all stitched together without interruption. No ocean cuts the horizon, no coastline marks the edge. It feels endless. Pause here and listen again. The wind sings against the rocks, carrying voices from hundreds of miles away. Perhaps a storm is building in the distance, thunder rumbling softly, rolling across the land. The sound reaches you, a deep vibration more than a noise. You close your eyes and feel it in your chest, as though the earth itself is speaking. Now imagine night falling on Pangaea. The sun dips low, staining the sky with orange and red. Shadows stretch across the plains. Insects begin their chorus, high-pitched and insistent. Somewhere in the darkness of the forest, a creature calls its voice echoing through the trees. Above the stars appear so many more than we see today, sharp and bright, without modern light to dim them. The Milky Way arches across the sky, a river of silver pouring from horizon to horizon. You lie down on the ground, the soil cool against your back. You feel the vibrations of life all around you, the scurrying of small creatures, the breath of the forest, the far-off crash of waves against cliffs. And you realize this is home too. Not just the divided continents, you know, but this unity, this vastness, this supercontinent that carried the roots of all life we know. Stay here for a moment. Let yourself feel Pangaea through all your senses. The sight of endless horizons, the sound of forests and deserts alive with unfamiliar voices, the scent of resin and smoke, the touch of stone warmed by sun, the taste of ancient air on your tongue. Together they form an experience of wholeness, of a world gathered in one. And as you drift with that thought, notice something. Pangaea is not only a place of the past, it is also a reminder written in your own senses. Every breeze, every scent of rain, every sound of forest or desert carries within it echoes of this ancient land. You are not separate from it. You are still walking in a way across its vastness. Sometimes, science gives us facts that feel too large to hold in the palm of the hand. All continents were once joined is one such fact. It is immense, distant, almost abstract. To bring it closer, the mind reaches for images, for metaphors, for shapes we already know. That is what we will do now. Step away from raw geology for a while, and let metaphor carry us into meaning. Think of a book, not the slim volume you might finish in a single evening, but a thick ancient tome whose pages stretch on and on. Now imagine someone tears that book apart, scattering its chapters across different rooms. Each page still holds part of the story, but you cannot see it whole unless you gather them again. That is the earth. Pangaea was the intact book, one continuous story. The continents today are the torn pages, scattered but still carrying fragments of the same narrative. When we look at coastlines that match or fossils that mirror each other across oceans, We are glimpsing sentences that once belonged on the same page. Or think of a great woven tapestry. Threads cross and bind colours, forming shapes and patterns. At some point the tapestry is cut into pieces and each piece is sent to a different corner of the world. A mountain chain here, a fern fossil there. To us they look incomplete. But if you stitch them back together in imagination, you can see the original design, the supercontinent itself. Pangaea is that lost tapestry torn by time, remembered in fragments. Another metaphor, a family. Imagine a great family meal, where everyone sits together, side by side. Laughter passes around the table, stories weave from one end to the other. That was Pangaea, a gathering, a closeness. But life moves on. Children grow, families scatter. Some move to other cities, some across oceans. Phone calls and letters become the fossils of their togetherness, proof of unity even in separation. That is what happened with the continents. They were once at the same table, sharing the same space. Now they live apart, but the memory of the gathering lingers in the stones. And what of the human body? Consider your own skin. At first glance it is whole, seamless. But look closer, and you will see faint lines, creases, places where the skin folds as you move. The earth has such lines too, faults, ridges, scars. They are the wrinkles of its movement, the reminders that it is not static. To imagine Pangaea is to imagine the earth's body drawn together, the skin smooth and unbroken before time pulled it into creases of oceans and fractures of mountains. One of the most powerful metaphors is that of breathing. Inhale, the chest expands, the lungs fill, everything gathers inward. Exhale, the chest contracts, the air releases, everything drifts outward. The earth breathes too, but on a scale far beyond ours. Supercontinents gather like an inhale, then break apart like an exhale. Pangaea was one long deep breath in. Our world now scattered and wide is the breath out. And one day, millions of years from now, the continents may gather again, drawn into another inhale. To live on Earth is to live inside that breathing. Metaphor does not replace science, it gives it texture. When we say Pangaea was a book torn apart, we are not denying plate tectonics. We are saying the Earth has a story, and stories are easier to carry than numbers alone. When we say Pangaea was a family meal, we are not pretending continents had conversations. We are remembering that closeness and separation are rhythms we know in our own lives. The Earth mirrors us, or perhaps we mirror the Earth. Why do we seek these metaphors? Because they let us feel deep time in human time. We cannot truly imagine 300 million years. The number stretches too far. But we can imagine a book torn, a family, scattering, a breath drawn and released. Through these images, the vast becomes intimate. Take, for example, the metaphor of music. Picture the Earth as an orchestra. Each continent is an instrument, some string, some brass, some percussion. In the time of Pangaea, the orchestra sat close, their sounds blending in immediate harmony. Later they drifted apart, each still playing, but from distant halls. To hear the whole song, you must imagine their notes reconnecting across the silence. The Earth has never stopped playing. It only shifted the seats. There is also the metaphor of memory. Think of your earliest memory, perhaps from childhood. It comes in flashes, a sound, a scent, a face. Not the whole picture, just fragments. Yet those fragments carry weight. They tell you that something once happened, even if you cannot recall it perfectly. Pangaea is like that. The Earth remembers it in fragments, a fossil here, a mountain chain there, a coastline's curve. Imperfect, incomplete, but enough to remind us of wholeness. Another image, a mosaic shattered into shards. Each shard still gleams with colour, still holds part of the pattern. If you press them together even roughly, you begin to see the image reappear. That is how science works with Pangaea. It takes the shards of stone and fossil, and with patience rebuilds the picture. The picture may never be perfect, but the pattern emerges. And then there is the metaphor of migration. Birds leave in autumn, returning in spring. Whales cross oceans, returning to the same bays year after year. Continents migrate too, but on timescales far beyond the patience of any living thing. They wander, they return, they collide again. Their journey is not aimless. It is part of a larger cycle, a pattern older than life itself. As you rest with these images, notice how they shift the feeling of Pangaea. No longer just rock and plate, it becomes story and symbol. No longer just distant past, it becomes mirror. Each metaphor opens a door, a book torn apart, a tapestry cut, a family scattering, a breath drawn and released, an orchestra drifting, a mosaic in shards. Each is true in its own way. Each helps us see what cannot be seen directly. Pause for a moment and let one of these images settle with you. Perhaps you prefer the book, the idea of pages scattered across time. Perhaps the family resonates, the warmth of togetherness, the ache of distance. Perhaps the breath, simple, rhythmic, something you can feel in your body right now. Whichever it is, hold it gently. Let it guide you deeper into the sense of Earth's story. And remember, metaphors are not distractions. They are bridges. They carry us from the familiar into the unfathomable. Through them, the unimaginable becomes touchable. Through them, Pangaea becomes not just a fact of geology, but a presence in your own imagination. So tonight, as you listen, breathe in slowly. Imagine continents gathering like words on a single page. Breathe out gently. Imagine them drifting like notes scattering into the distance. Let your breath be the rhythm of the earth itself, the rhythm of unity and separation, of wholeness and change. In that rhythm, Pangaea is still here, not gone but transformed, not lost but waiting in memory and metaphor for us to notice. But what if the story had gone differently? What if Pangaea had never fractured? If the supercontinent had remained whole, carrying its forests, deserts, rivers and mountains into the present day? Close your eyes for a moment and picture the globe. No Atlantic Ocean yawning between the Americas and Africa. No Indian Ocean spreading between Asia and Australia. No Pacific stretching across half the planet. Instead, imagine a single colossal landmass wrapped in a continuous ribbon of ocean. A world where all people, all cities, all nations rise on one shared continent. How would such a world feel? Perhaps, first of all, it would feel smaller. Travel by land could take you from one edge of the earth to the other without ever boarding a ship. You could walk, if you were patient enough, from the deserts of what we call Africa into the icy reaches of Antarctica without ever touching a coast. Roads and railways might stretch endlessly, highways, threading across thousands of miles of connected land. And what of culture in our world separation-shaped diversity? Oceans acted as barriers, isolating peoples, allowing languages and traditions to blossom in unique ways. If Pangaea had stayed whole, perhaps humanity would feel more connected, more unified. There might be fewer languages, fewer distinct customs, fewer isolated identities. We might think of ourselves not as nations, but as branches of one enormous community. Or perhaps the opposite. Maybe the sheer size of Pangaea would create divisions just as deep, not by oceans, but by distance. To travel from one side to the other would take months, maybe years, and vast deserts and mountains would be just as isolating as seas. Picture the cities. Instead of New York, London, Beijing, and Rio scattered on different continents, they might cluster in strange arrangements on the same superland. Trade would not require fleets of ships, only caravans, rails, and roads. Perhaps great metropolises would rise along the borders between climates, the rim of deserts, the edges of jungles, the mouths of massive rivers that carried goods from one side of Pangaea to another. Climate, too, would be profoundly different. One of the reasons Pangaea eventually broke apart was the way supercontinents shape weather. The interiors of such vast landmasses tend to be dry and harsh, far from the moderating influence of the sea. Deserts in the heart of Pangaea would stretch wider than the Sahara, harsher than any we know today. Would humans have been able to thrive in such environments? Perhaps great migrations would have carried us to the coasts where climates were gentler, and civilizations might line the endless shoreline of the surrounding ocean like pearls on a necklace. And what of the creatures? Our biodiversity today is partly the result of isolation. When continents drifted apart, species adapted to their new homes, creating kangaroos in Australia, lemurs in Madagascar, armadillos in South America. Without separation, perhaps such unique creatures would never have evolved. Life would be less varied, more uniform, spread across a single stage rather than scattered theatres. Imagine a world with fewer surprises in nature, fewer hidden corners of evolution, but perhaps more resilience, more continuity. Would there be oceans at all beyond the single global sea? Scientists call it Panthalassa, the great ocean that once surrounded Pangaea. In our alternate world, that ocean would remain wide and nearly unimaginable, stretching endlessly without interruption. Crossing it might feel like crossing eternity. Our explorers might still dream of distant lands, but they would be across the sea, not across the next continent. The politics of such a world invite speculation too. With all people gathered on one land, would conflict be greater or smaller? Would unity come more easily, or would endless borders within the continent create even more strife? Perhaps wars would be fought not for oceans and colonies, but for rivers, forests, and fertile valleys deep within the same massive land. The story of humanity might be less about discovering new continents and more about learning to share the same one. And think about yourself living in such a world. If you wanted to visit another culture, you could board a train or even walk across thousands of miles of continuous land. There would be no need to sail across oceans, no need for airplanes to leap vast waters. Journeys would still take time, but they would be journeys by land through deserts, mountains, and forests that never end. Would that make the world feel larger or smaller, perhaps both at once, large in distance, small in its unity? Pause here for a moment and let yourself imagine standing in the center of this eternal Pangaea. The horizon stretches farther than you can see. Caravans of travelers cross dusty plains carrying goods from one region to another. Herds of animals roam freely unconfined by seas. Rivers twist like silver threads across the land, joining climates and cultures. Above the sky is familiar blue by day, scattered with stars by night, but beneath the earth feels utterly different. Take a slow breath. In this alternate earth, even your breath might carry differently. The winds would flow in strange patterns across the supercontinent storms, building enormous strength without oceans to break them. Rain might come in torrents to some regions and never reach others at all. People would learn to live by the rhythms of this single unified land, adapting not to oceans, but to vast interiors. Of course, we cannot know for sure. Maybe if Pangaea had remained life, itself would have taken a different path. Perhaps mammals would never have thrived. Perhaps humans would never have evolved. Or perhaps we would, but our societies would look so unfamiliar that we would not recognize them. And yet imagining this world has a quiet beauty. It reminds us that our present reality is only one version of what could have been. The Earth did not have to look the way it does now. The map we know, the Americas, Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, is not permanent. It is just one arrangement among many, a single snapshot in the endless film reel of deep time. So as you drift with this thought tonight, let the alternate Earth settle in your mind. A world of one land, one ocean. A world where unity never fractured. A world where the continents still hold each other pressed together as they once were. And then, as gently as a tide, return to our own world. Oceans wide, continents scattered, life diverse. The path the Earth chose, or perhaps the path it could not help but take. Both worlds are real in their own way, one in stone, one in imagination. Both teach us the same truth: the Earth is not fixed. It can be many things, many shapes, many homes. Science can tell us what happened. Philosophy can tell us what it might mean. Tonight, let's allow both to speak together, weaving fact and reflection into a quiet rhythm, each piece of knowledge about Pangaea followed by a thought about life, about time, about us. Consider the simple fact: the continents move at only a few centimeters per year. That is slower than your fingernails grow. And yet, given millions of years, those centimeters open oceans and raise mountains. Reflection: how much of our own change is like this? Slow, imperceptible, dismissed as nothing in the moment, but over time it shapes the entire landscape of who we are. Fact: fossils of the same fern, Glossopteris, appear in South America, Africa, India, Antarctica, and Australia. A single plant stretched across what are now separate worlds. Reflection: the memory of unity survives even in fragments. Perhaps the same is true for us, that no matter how far apart we drift, traces of connection remain like fossil leaves pressed in the rock of memory. Fact: the Appalachian Mountains in North America match the Caledonian Ranges of Scotland and Scandinavia. Once they were one continuous chain raised by collision, later torn apart by drifting plates. Reflection: relationships too can feel like mountain ranges, solid, eternal, until time and distance separate them. Yet even apart, they still echo one another. The stones remember the collision just as we remember the closeness. Fact: the Atlantic Ocean began as a crack in Pangaea, a small rift that widened over millions of years into the vast sea we know today. Reflection: sometimes the biggest separations in life begin as hairline fractures barely noticed at first, a word left unsaid, a silence allowed to grow. Oceans too begin as cracks. And yet, like the Atlantic, those separations can carry new currents, new possibilities, even as they divide. Fact: Pangaea's vast interior was likely harsh and arid deserts stretching far from the moderating influence of the sea. Reflection: closeness does not always mean comfort. Even unity can hold difficulty. To be gathered together is not to be spared struggle. Sometimes it is to face challenges, more intense, more concentrated. Pangaea was whole but not easy. Unity in our lives is the same. It is a gift, but it is never simple. Fact: supercontinents are not rare accidents. Earth has formed several: Rodinia, Columbia, Nuna, and more. Pangaea is only the most recent. Another will likely form millions of years from now. Reflection: nothing is final. The end of one wholeness does not mean wholeness will never return. Separation: unity. Separation again. It is a cycle. Perhaps our own lives follow such cycles, gathering, scattering, and gathering again in patterns we cannot always see. Fact: plate tectonics is driven by heat within the Earth, convection currents moving like water in a pot. That invisible motion beneath our feet shapes mountains, oceans, continents. Reflection: invisible forces shape us too, our habits, our beliefs, our quiet choices. We may not notice them, but over time they move us, drift us, remake us. The ground of the self is never still. Fact: when continents collide, they crumple and rise into mountains. The Himalayas today are growing higher each year because India continues to push into Asia. Reflection: conflict can create beauty. Not all collisions are destructive. Some raise mountains, some create new heights. The Himalayas are a reminder that tension, when endured, can lift us toward the sky. Fact: when continents drift apart, they open new coastlines. Shorelines teem with life: estuaries, reefs, mangroves, places of extraordinary richness. Reflection: separation is not only loss, it can be abundance. New edges, new habitats, new possibilities appear when things drift apart. A goodbye can carry within it the seed of something unexpected and alive. Fact: the very idea of Pangaea was ridiculed at first. Wegener's theory of drift was dismissed as impossible until decades later, when evidence caught up with imagination. Reflection: truth often begins as doubt. Ideas may be mocked before they are understood. Perhaps the same is true for us. The parts of ourselves we dismiss may one day be seen as essential. Fact: the cycle of supercontinents spans hundreds of millions of years. Compared to that, all of human history is only a few seconds before midnight. Reflection: our worries shrink against this backdrop. Deadlines, failures, fears, all real, all heavy but small compared to the patience of the earth. Deep time invites us to breathe, to take perspective, to remember that we are brief, and that is beautiful. Fact: Pangaea was surrounded by a single vast ocean, Panthalassa. Nearly all of Earth's water pressed against one edge of land. Reflection: even in unity there is otherness. The continent was whole, but it lived beside an endless sea. No matter how gathered we are, there will always be mystery beyond us, an ocean we cannot fully cross. Fact: Antarctica once held forests. Fossils reveal tree stumps rooted in what is now frozen desert. Reflection: nothing is fixed. What is barren today was once alive. What feels lifeless in us may carry buried forests waiting quietly for light. Fact: the continents will drift again. In 200 million years, scientists predict a new supercontinent will form. Reflection: endings are not ends. They are pauses, transformations, preludes. Just as Earth gathers its lands again, so too may our own stories gather what was once lost. Each of these pairings, fact and reflection, stone and thought, reminds us that the earth is not separate from us. Its movements mirror our movements. Its cycles echo our cycles. Its patience offers us patience. So as you breathe tonight, let these truths settle. The earth is not still. Neither are you. Continents drift, and so do we. Collisions raise mountains, separations open coasts, deserts teach resilience, oceans bring possibility. Everything changes, and everything continues. Let that thought carry you gently into rest. You are part of the same pattern, the same rhythm, the same story written in stone and in silence. Before we wander further into the story of drifting continents and ancient oceans, let's pause. A story as large as Pangaea can feel heavy, stretching the mind across millions of years. It's easy to forget that listening is not only about learning, it's also about resting. So for the next few minutes, let's step aside from facts and let ourselves breathe. Take a gentle inhale, not too deep, not forced, just enough to notice the air as it enters cool and quiet. Hold it for the briefest moment, then release it softly as though you are exhaling into the vastness of time itself. Do this once more slowly, letting each breath remind you that you too are part of the planet's rhythm. As you breathe, imagine the Earth doing the same. Inhale, continents gather, drifting closer, colliding gently until they form one body. Exhale, they separate, sliding apart, opening seas and shaping new lands. Your lungs mirror the planet each breath, a miniature supercontinent cycle. Each cycle, a reminder that change is not something to resist, but something to flow with. Now let's soften the body. Notice your shoulders. They may be holding tension tight without you realizing. Imagine them melting heavy as if they were mountains slowly eroding into rivers. Let gravity carry them down. Notice your hands. Perhaps they've been clenched or restless. Open them. Let them rest like stones on the ground of Pangaea. Steady, unmoving part of something larger. Shift your attention to the small muscles of your face. The jaw, the forehead, the space between your eyes. Let them loosen. Picture the way Earth's crust relaxes. After a quake, pressure released, tension softened. Your own face can be like that, too calm and at ease. Take another breath. In, out. Each exhale is like an ocean tide washing gently against the edge of a supercontinent. It retreats, then returns, steady, patient. You are floating with that tide now, not needing to swim, not needing to reach any shore, just carried. Listen to the sounds around you. Perhaps there is quiet. Perhaps there is a faint hum, traffic outside, a fan in the corner, a clock ticking somewhere in the room. Let each sound become part of the background, like the wind across Pangaea's deserts or the rustle of ancient forests. Nothing is a distraction. Everything belongs to the soundscape of this moment. And if your mind drifts, that's perfectly fine. Minds drift like continents. They separate from the present, wander across seas of thought, then return. There is no need to pull it back sharply. Just notice the drift and let it be. After all, the Earth has been drifting for hundreds of millions of years. Why should your thoughts not drift too? Imagine now that you are lying on the surface of Pangaea. The soil beneath you is warm from the sun. The air is still. Around you stretch forests of giant conifers, ferns taller than you, creatures moving quietly in the underbrush. You are still part of the land. Above, the stars are beginning to appear one by one as twilight deepens. Each star is like a reminder of time, vast beyond comprehension. Yet here you are, breathing slowly, feeling small but safe. Let that image anchor you. Feel the ground beneath your body now, wherever you are. It may be a bed, a chair, a couch, but in this moment it is the surface of the ancient Earth. Solid, steady, carrying you the way it has carried everything that has ever lived. Take another breath. This time, picture the inhale as the gathering of mountains, the exhale as their slow erosion into rivers, breath as geology, breath as patience, breath as the slow turning of deep time. Now gently scan your body. Start with your feet. Let them sink into the ground, heavy, relaxed. Move up to your legs, letting each muscle soften. Your stomach, your chest loosening with every breath. Your arms, your neck, your head, all unwinding, all letting go. By the time you finish, you are as still and vast as the continent itself, whole and complete. And if your thoughts wander back to worries, something undone, something ahead, imagine them as small cracks in rock. Over time, water flows in, smooths them, widens them, turns them into valleys, into rivers, into beauty. Worries are not permanent. They are the beginning of transformation. Stay here for a few more breaths. Inhale unity, exhale change. Inhale patience, exhale release. Each cycle slows you, grounds you, eases you. When you are ready, let your mind return to the image of Pangaea, a continent that once was whole, resting quietly under the stars of a world without division. You are lying there, still listening, not to noise but to silence, not to chaos but to rhythm. And remember, this pause, this quiet breathing is not separate from the story. It is part of it. Just as Pangaea was not only stone but silence, not only geology but rhythm, so too your life is not only doing but resting. Both matter, both belong. We have wandered a long way already, through science and story, through fossils and myths, through imagination and reflection. Perhaps now is the right time to pause again, not a pause of silence, but a pause to gather the threads we have spun. Because Pangaea, like any great subject, is not just one thing. It is geology, yes, but also philosophy. It is memory, but also metaphor. It is history, but also imagination. Let's weave these strands together gently as though we were braiding grasses by the riverside. Begin with science. Science tells us that Pangaea was real. Around 335 million years ago, drifting plates gathered, pulling the land of the earth into one immense body. Fossils confirm it, plants and reptiles appearing across continents now divided. Mountains confirm it, chains torn apart, but still echoing across oceans. Seafloor ridges confirm its scars where land broke open, birthing the Atlantic. Pangaea is written into stone, into the very fabric of our planet's crust. But science also tells us that this unity was temporary. Around 175 million years ago, fractures began, rifts opened, oceans poured in. The supercontinent broke slowly, piece by piece, into the map we recognize today. Science sees cycles here. Supercontinents form, break, reform. It has happened before, it will happen again. Pangaea is one breath in a vast rhythm. Now add myth. Long before geologists, humans spoke of one Earth. They imagined Gaia, mother of all life. They told stories of Ymir's body becoming the land of turtles, carrying continents of sky women falling onto unbroken ground. They painted the Earth as one being whole and alive. They could not prove it, but they felt it. Their myths are not fossils, but they are evidence. Evidence of human longing to see unity beneath division. And isn't it striking that science and myth, often cast as opposites, point in the same direction here? One uses fossils, the other stories. One speaks of tectonic plates, the other of gods and giants. Yet both remind us the Earth was once whole. Perhaps that is why the word Pangaea itself carries such resonance. It is both fact and symbol proof and poetry. Now add philosophy. What does Pangaea mean for us? Perhaps it is a mirror. Continents unite, then drift. People unite, then drift. Families gather, then scatter. Communities form, then dissolve. This rhythm is not failure, it is nature. Separation can hurt, but it can also create new life, new diversity, new possibility. Just as Pangaea's breaking gave us the world we know, so too our own fractures can give us futures we cannot yet imagine. Pangaea also teaches patience. Change happens slowly, so slowly that we cannot feel it in a lifetime, and yet in time it remakes the world. Maybe our own small steps too matter more than we think. Perhaps every kindness, every choice, every effort is a centimetre of drift that over years opens oceans or raises mountains in our lives. And finally, Pangaea teaches humility. To know that continents themselves are temporary is to know that nothing is fixed. Our cities, our nations, our maps, all of them are fleeting compared to deep time. That realization could make us feel insignificant, but it can also free us. If nothing is permanent, then we are not failures for changing, not broken for drifting, not weak for being brief. We are simply part of the same rhythm. Now let's add imagination. We pictured standing on Pangaea, listening to forests of giant ferns, tasting air thick with resin, hearing reptiles stir in the underbrush. We pictured an alternate Earth where Pangaea never broke, where humanity grew on one endless land. These imaginations are not fantasy, they are bridges. They carry us from the fact to the feeling. Without them, Pangaea is only numbers. With them, it becomes alive again. Science, myth, philosophy, imagination. 4 strands of one braid. Together they show us that Pangaea is not only an ancient supercontinent, but a lens through which to see ourselves. From science we learn what happened. From myth we learn how people have always longed for wholeness. From philosophy we learn what wholeness and separation mean for our own lives. From imagination we learn how to feel it, how to bring it close, how to let it breathe in us. Let's step back now and look at the pattern. Pangaea is proof that unity is possible, but also proof that unity changes. It is evidence that the Earth is alive with cycles, and evidence that nothing lasts forever. It is a story of connection and fracture, of patience and renewal. It is, in short, the story of life itself. And maybe that is the quietest truth of all, that the Earth and we are not so different. We live on it, yes, but we also live like it. We carry its rhythms in our lungs, in our relationships, in our stories. We are continents ourselves, sometimes united, sometimes apart, always drifting, always moving, always alive. Take a breath with that thought. Inhale unity, exhale separation. Both are natural, both belong. If you step outside tomorrow and look at the horizon, remember that the land beneath you was once pressed against lands far away. If you look at a globe, remember that its shapes are not final, they are moments in motion. And if you look at your own life, remember that the same is true. Nothing is fixed, nothing is final. Change is the only permanence, and within it lies beauty. So as we gather these threads, science, myth, philosophy, imagination, we weave a softer understanding. Pangaea is not only a supercontinent, it is a symbol of patience, a mirror of our lives, a reminder of unity, and a promise that even in separation we are still part of one Earth. Hold that thought gently as you rest. Let it settle not as a conclusion but as a comfort. The Earth has always shifted, and yet it has always carried life. You too can shift, can change, and still belong. We have travelled far together tonight, across deserts that no longer exist, through forests that turned to stone, over mountains that were torn in half by drifting seas. We have stood in myth, listened to science, wandered in imagination, and rested in reflection. Now we find ourselves near the end of this long journey, though not the end of the story. Pangaea is too vast for endings. It does not close like a book. It lingers like a horizon, always just ahead. This is the moment to step gently from exploration into rest, to cross the threshold from wandering into stillness. The story of Pangaea has been many things tonight, fact and symbol, presence and possibility, but now it becomes something simpler. It becomes a companion to your breath, a rhythm to guide you softly towards sleep. Picture again the shape of the supercontinent, not in detail, not with maps and lines, but as a single sweep of land. Let the edges blur. Let it become not geography, but feeling a sense of unity, of wholeness, of belonging. Hold it gently in your mind like a glowing ember at the end of a fire. Notice how your body responds. Perhaps your shoulders have softened. Perhaps your breathing has slowed. Maybe your eyes feel heavier, drawn down like the setting sun. That is what stories do when told with patience. They don't rush you to conclusions. They ease you toward rest. Think of the earth itself as it turns beneath us. It too is always easing from day into night, from night into day. Somewhere dawn is breaking. Somewhere else evening is falling. And here for you, it is the time of drifting, the quiet passage from wakefulness into sleep. The earth does not strain as it spins. It moves steadily, gracefully, as it always has. You too do not need to strain. Simply drift as continents drift, as time drifts, as clouds drift across the evening sky. Let's remember one more image before we cross the threshold. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of Pangaea's great desert as night begins to fall. The heat of the day cools. The sand, once hot, becomes cool beneath your feet. Above, stars prick the darkening sky. The horizon stretches endlessly, yet you feel no urgency to cross it. You are content to stand, to breathe, to rest. That is the feeling we carry into sleep. And now let the story grow quieter. Pangaea is still there, but softer now, like a memory receding into the background. You don't need to hold the details anymore. You don't need to remember the names of plants or the ages of stones. All you need is the rhythm continents, unite continents, drift, unity returns, change continues. It is the same rhythm as your own breath, the same rhythm as rest. Inhale gently, exhale slowly, inhale wholeness, exhale release. As we step through this threshold together, notice how even the words are becoming slower, gentler, fewer. The story is no longer pushing forward. It is settling like dust after a long day, like sand after a wave retreats. You are settling too. If thoughts come, let them be like clouds. Watch them pass. You don't need to chase them. You don't need to hold them. Let them drift the way. Continents drift quietly, naturally, without hurry. This is the gift of the end of a story, not that everything is answered, but that you are carried to a place where questions can rest. Pangaea is still a mystery in many ways, how exactly it formed, how life endured within it, what the next supercontinent will be. But you don't need to solve those mysteries tonight. You only need to let them keep you company as you drift into the gentlest kind of unknowing. Imagine again that you are lying on the surface of Pangaea. The air is still, the stars are countless. You feel the ground beneath you warm, steady, ancient. It has carried life for hundreds of millions of years, and tonight it carries you. Let it hold you. Let it cradle you. Let it remind you that you too belong to deep time, that you too are part of this patient planet. The threshold is here now. You have one foot in waking, one foot in dreaming, and Pangaea, immense and quiet, stands like a bridge between them. Cross it gently. Let the land carry you into rest. When we began this journey, we asked a question. What if all the land we know, every continent, every mountain chain, every coastline, was once part of one vast whole? That question guided us through science, through story, through imagination. And here we are now at the quiet end of our exploration, still holding the same question. The difference is that it feels softer now, less like a puzzle to be solved, and more like a companion to rest beside. So what do we make of Pangaea? We know with confidence that it existed. The rocks and fossils have spoken. We know that it gathered slowly and that it broke apart just as slowly. We know that it was not the first supercontinent, and it will not be the last. These are the facts, steady and sure. But facts are only part of the story. Pangaea also lingers as a metaphor, a mirror, a reminder. It asks us to think about unity and separation, about patience and impermanence. It reminds us that change is natural, that even the ground beneath us is not fixed. And still, the question remains, what does it mean for us here and now? Perhaps the meaning is not a single answer, but a collection of possibilities. Maybe Pangaea tells us that wholeness is always part of the Earth's memory, that even when things drift apart, their connections remain. Like fossils on distant shores, like coastlines that still fit like mountains, that still echo one another, separation is never the whole story. Maybe Pangaea tells us that change, though slow, is inevitable, that we too are drifting toward new places, new identities, new ways of being, and that this drift is not something to fear but something to trust, as natural as continents sliding over molten stone. Maybe Pangaea tells us that unity and difference are not opposites, that even when all land was one, there were deserts and forests, rivers and mountains, climates harsh and gentle. Togetherness does not erase diversity. It holds it. Or maybe Pangaea tells us nothing at all except to wonder, to look at the world with wider eyes, to see our maps not as fixed truths but as fleeting shapes, to see ourselves not as isolated moments but as parts of a longer rhythm. Pause here for a moment and let that openness settle. You don't need to decide what Pangaea means. You don't need to carry a final conclusion. It is enough to know that the Earth was once whole, and that it will be whole again in some far future beyond our imagining. It is enough to rest in the possibility. Think again of the image of the book, its pages scattered. You hold one page in your hand, and you know there are others, even if you cannot gather them all. That is enough. You don't need the entire story to know it was once complete. Think again of the image of breath. The earth inhales, gathers, forms a supercontinent. The earth exhales, drifts, opens oceans. You are breathing too. You don't need to know how many breaths you will take. You only need to feel the rhythm in this one. Think again of the image of stars above Pangaea's sky. They look down on one continent then. They look down on scattered continents now. They will look down on another supercontinent someday. You don't need to know why. You only need to know that you are part of that same gaze, part of that same vastness. And so we circle back to our question. What if all the land was once one? The answer is simple, it was. And yet the deeper answer is open. What does that unity mean? What does it tell us about who we are, how we live, how we drift and return? That part is yours to hold, yours to wonder, yours to carry into sleep. Take a slow breath in. Feel the weight of the day gather. Exhale. Let it drift, separate, scatter. Unity, separation. Unity again. You are part of the same rhythm as Pangaea. As you rest tonight, remember that your own life is shaped by the same truths. You were once gathered with people you loved. You drifted. You may gather again. The patterns of continents are the patterns of hearts. And perhaps that is the real beauty of Pangaea, not that it gives us one answer, but that it leaves us with many. Not that it concludes, but that it invites us to keep asking. Not that it resolves, but that it whispers, look closer. Wonder more, rest in the mystery. So let the question remain open, gentle as the night around you. What if the world was once whole? What if it will be whole again? What if unity and separation are not opposites, but partners in the same dance? You don't need to decide. You only need to listen. And then, when you are ready to let the question follow you softly into your dreams, we have drifted together across a long landscape tonight, through stone and myth, through forests long vanished, and oceans newly born through imagination and reflection. Perhaps now you feel softer, calmer, more spacious inside. That is what stories of deep time can do. They take the weight of small worries and stretch them across a canvas so large that they dissolve into gentleness. As we rest here at the near end of our journey, I want to thank you for walking with me. Your presence here matters. The earth has always told its story, whether or not anyone listens. But when you listen, when you pause, when you breathe with the planet's rhythm, the story finds a home. Tonight you have given Pangaea that home. If this story has brought you ease, if it has softened your evening or given your mind a place to rest, I invite you very gently to let me know. You can press the like button or subscribe if you wish to return to these journeys again. Not as an obligation, never as a demand, but as a quiet gesture, like leaving a pebble on a path so that others can follow. Perhaps you might share this with someone who also loves to wonder. Someone who, like you, sometimes lies awake searching for a calm story to carry them into sleep. These videos are meant to be like lanterns left burning in the dark. The more lanterns we leave, the brighter the path becomes for those who wander here after us. And beyond the buttons and shares, I invite you to leave a thought in the comments. Maybe a memory of when you first saw a world map and wondered why the shapes seemed to fit. Maybe a dream you've had about ancient Earth. Maybe simply a note saying where you are listening from tonight, your room, your city, your corner of the world. Each comment is like another fossil, another trace proof that we were gathered here in this moment of time. I love reading them. I love seeing how these stories ripple outward. How someone in one continent listens in the night while someone on another continent listens in the morning. In a way, the comments themselves become a reminder of Pangaea, that we are still connected, even when oceans separate us. If this journey has eased you into rest, then that alone is enough. If you drifted halfway through, if the words became softer than dreams, and you only woke to notice the ending, that too is perfect. These videos are meant for that. To keep you company whether you stay with every word or float away into sleep long before. So do not feel guilty if you missed sections. The earth doesn't mind. Pangaea itself drifted for millions of years without anyone to watch. Your resting is not a failure. It is part of the design. And perhaps when you wake tomorrow, you might carry one small thought with you, that the ground beneath your feet is not fixed but moving alive, patient, that your own changes are natural, even necessary, that nothing is permanent, not even oceans, not even mountains, not even worries. Everything drifts, and in that drift lies the possibility of new beauty. If you carry even a whisper of that thought, then this story has done its work. So here is my gentle call to action, softer than a whisper. If this story has comforted you, consider joining this little circle by subscribing. Not because you must, but because you want to hear the next chapter when it arrives. Consider liking so that this story floats to others who might need it tonight. Consider sharing so that the ripples reach farther shores. And if you don't, that's all right too. You've already given your time, your presence, your breath. That is more than enough. Take a final slow breath with me. Inhale unity, exhale release. Feel how the earth holds you, the way it has held every creature, every forest, every drifting continent. Let that comfort be the real conclusion. And know that if you wish, you can always return here to this channel, to this voice, to this quiet rhythm of science told slowly. There will always be another story waiting, another horizon to follow, another night to soften. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for drifting with me through the strange truth of Pangaea. We have wandered together through the vastness of Pangaea. We have listened to rocks, to fossils, to myths, to memories. We have stood on its deserts, walked through its forests, imagined its unity and its fracture. And now, as our journey comes to a gentle close, it is time to look forward, because the Earth's story never ends. Each chapter leads into another. Each supercontinent dissolves into oceans only to be gathered again. Each question lingers, opening the door to the next. So tonight, before we close our eyes fully, let's leave a lantern lit for what comes next. Let's take a moment to wonder what is the next mystery waiting for us in the quiet corridors of deep time. Imagine, if you will, a world covered in ice. Not just mountain peaks or polar caps, but nearly everything locked in white. Oceans, frozen continents, buried life, struggling at the edges. This too is part of Earth's story, the great ice ages when glaciers stretched across continents and cold reshaped the face of the planet. What was it like to live in such a world? How did life survive? How did Earth breathe through its long winters? Or imagine a world before Pangaea, when the land was not joined but scattered into strange arrangements. Continents colliding in different patterns, oceans flowing in different currents. Names like Rodinia and Nuna whisper to us from deep time, asking us to imagine what those forgotten supercontinents looked like. Could they teach us something new about cycles of unity and separation? Or perhaps we look forward instead of backward. What will the Earth look like 200 million years from now, when the continents gather again? Will we see the birth of Pangaea Proxima, a new supercontinent, rising from the slow drift of plates? What creatures will walk its forests? What oceans will wash its shores? What skies will arch above it? There are other mysteries too. What if the Earth itself is more than stone and water? What if it carries a kind of consciousness, a slow awareness woven into its cycles? Could the planet itself be alive, breathing and noticing, guiding its balance in ways we barely perceive? That is a question that pulls us into the realm of wonder, just as Pangaea did. And what about us human beings? We wonder about the Earth's past, but what if humanity is only one chapter in its story? What if we are not the first civilization to rise here? Could there have been others buried deep in the geological record, their traces erased by time? Or what if we ourselves are only a phase, a brief spark in the planet's longer tale? These are the kinds of questions that wait beyond tonight's journey. Questions that cannot be answered completely, but can be held like a stone in the palm, smooth and weighty and full of mystery. Each question leads to another. Each story folds into the next. So as you drift towards sleep, let your imagination rest on what is to come. Perhaps the next night we will wander through an age of ice-tracing glaciers across the land. Or perhaps we will stand in the warmth of another supercontinent still unborn, Or perhaps we will ask what it means for a planet to be alive, or whether civilizations rise and fall beyond the limits of our memory. Take a breath with me now. Inhale curiosity, exhale wonder. Feel how even the unknown can be a comfort, a reminder that mystery is not emptiness but abundance. The story of Pangaea is ending for tonight, but the Earth is still speaking. It will speak again in the next story, and the next, and the next. You are welcome to return whenever you wish to walk again in deep time, to let science move slowly, to let curiosity become calm. So, here is the final invitation. Join me again next time. We will light another lantern. We will follow another question. We will wander once more through the quiet corridors of history until sleep gently finds you. For now, rest with the thought that the Earth is not finished. Its story continues, and so does ours. Good night.